Welcome to No Apologies. I'm Dana Lash. Well, if you have ever watched Alice in Wonderland, you recall a very memorable character, the Cheshire Cat. No matter what Alice would ask the Cheshire Cat, the answers would always contradict themselves. So when Alice asks the Cheshire Cat where the White Rabbit is, he points Alice in two opposite directions at the same time. And at one point, Alice asks the Cheshire Cat which way she should go, and the Cheshire Cat answers back with a question of his own. Well, that depends on where you want to get to. And perhaps you kind of know where I'm already going with this metaphor. Alice is us. We definitely feel that way. The American people lost in this forest of confusing data and messages and contradictory messaging about the coronavirus. The White Rabbit Alice is looking for, that's normalcy. Just a return to some normal life that Americans lost a year and a half ago when everyone was told that all these masks, the social distancing, the lockdowns, this is just a temporary inconvenience. So who's the Cheshire Cat? Well, the CDC, of course, and Dr. Fauci and the NIH and the Biden administration. I think they should all be included in that as well. But unfortunately for all of us, this isn't a movie. These are years of our very finite lives that are being disrupted and spent by experts who don't really seem to know down from up. And we're living in a world where many people don't know what a woman or a man is, apparently, and science isn't standing up to any kind of unscientific assertion. Science also seems to have abandoned rationality. These days, all for ideology and agenda. So we collectively have entered this upside down world, this Alice in Wonderland that's actually all too real, where the CDC doesn't know where to go because it's actually not clear they're sure where they are or where they want to get to. Most Americans just want to get back to their old lives. No more masks, no more lockdowns. And they also don't want to be shamed if they choose not to take a particular medical injection. So in other words, Americans just want to get back to the way it always was, that world that we called normal. Remember that place? It was great. I love normal. But the Follow the Science CDC, much like the Cheshire Cat, doesn't seem at all sure where it's going. Nor is it actually clear what science the CDC is even following at this point. They don't even bother to offer any scientific data for some of their latest decisions. Even the Washington Post, that bastion of conservatism, they're starting to ask questions. Here's their headline. This is just out this morning. It reads, CDC reversal on indoor masking prompts experts to ask, where's the data? Now, the WAPO article is asking a really, really good question. So why this U-turn on masks? They ask, where's the data to support it? So just a few weeks ago, we were told by the CDC, good news, you're free to take your mask off, only if you're vaccinated though. And now, just a few weeks later, they're telling everyone, especially the vaccinated people, put your mask back on. And they say it's because of the Delta variant. That's the Cheshire Cat CDC. They're saying it's the Delta variant because some data seems to indicate that vaccinated people can spread the virus just as good as unvaccinated people. So what data are they basing this off of? Well, they didn't actually cite any in their report. The Cheshire Cat CDC did not, in fact. At least nothing that they're willing to share with us. So this is from the WAPO piece. It says, quote, the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention did not publish the new research. In the text of the updated masking guidance, the agency merely cited CDC COVID-19 response team unpublished data 2021. Some outside scientists have their own message. Show us the data. Yeah, that's pretty unbelievable. They're making a claim, that the piece continues, with Delta, that people with the Delta variant who are vaccinated and unvaccinated, that they have, get this, similar levels of viral load. But nobody knows what that means. This from Greg Gonzalez. He's an associate professor at the Yale School of Public Health. He says, quote, that it's meaningless unless we see the data, end quote. Yeah, that's a pretty significant observation. It's a pretty significant thing. If the unvaccinated, and some studies say that they might have, everybody's now saying that it looks like they may have the same exact viral load as unvaccinated people. That's a huge thing, which means, and the CDC not actually publishing their sources, which caused WAPO to ask this, that yes, it kind of seems meaningless without context, but it's all par for the course because it's the Cheshire Cat CDC that's leading us down the path. Doesn't really matter where you're going if you don't know where you want to get. Now, another example of this madness, you gotta watch this. This is crazy. This is Dr. Fauci, who is tying himself in knots with 1,000 opinions on masks. Watch this supercut.
People should not be walking around with masks.
Let me just state for the record that masks are not theater.
Wearing a mask might make people feel a little bit better. And
Masks are protective.
but it's not providing the perfect protection that people think that it is.
There has not been any indication that putting a mask on and wearing a mask for a considerable period of time has any deleterious effects.
There are unintended consequences. People keep fiddling with the mask and they keep touching their face.
And can you get some schmutz sort of staying inside there?
Of course.
You do not need to wear a mask indoors if, in fact, you've been vaccinated. Good that you're vaccinated, but in a situation where you have people indoors, particularly crowded, you should wear a mask.
So even if you are vaccinated, you should wear a mask.
That if in fact you are vaccinated, fully vaccinated, you are protected, and you do not need to wear a mask outdoors or indoors.
What? Yeah, that's some pretty Cheshire Cat stuff from Dr. Fauci right there. I mean, it's completely confusing. Now, all of this to say is that I don't think anybody is listening anymore to Dr. Fauci, and the Cheshire Cat CDC, clearly cuckoo for Cocoa Puffs, but rather than admit any of this, the CDC, the Biden administration, a lot of other people, it seems, would prefer to somehow blame Republicans or just random unvaccinated people because it takes attention off their own incompetence and bungling of the messaging. So here's a clip circulating on the Webernets this morning. This is Republican Dan Crenshaw, who's pretty much summing up all of these attempts to distract from the government's own disastrous messaging and incompetence in dealing with this virus. Watch.
We're all sick of the vaccine controversy here. Look, I think the vaccine is safe and effective. I also don't think you can be forced to take it. And I'm really sick of the Democrats especially trying to politicize this and gaslight the American people and say, look at these Republicans bad-mouthing the vaccine. I've never bad-mouthed the vaccine at all, actually. But you know who has? Kamala Harris, Governor Cuomo of New York. I mean, they're all on the record. Okay, back in October, when Trump was touting this vaccine, they were on the record saying that you can't trust the FDA. You take it based on your own personal health and your risk assessment of your own life. We are well on our way out of this pandemic and learning to live with the virus in a very common sense manner. Okay, let's not try to go back to the times of 2020 where we're talking about lockdowns and mandates and fining people and putting them in jail if they don't do exactly what we want them to do and behave exactly how we want them to.
Yeah, Congressman Dan Crenshaw is right, and I'll say this: I also agree with him, and I have never run down any of the vaccines actually, and whether it's Moderna, whether it's AstraZeneca, whether it's Johnson & Johnson. I just want answers. What I run down is the government incompetency, the messed up government messaging, and the fact that they seem to think it's everyone else's fault if, like we were just talking about with the CDC, they publish a new edict on masking, new guidance on masking, and yet they don't even have the courtesy to actually cite and include the references that they are using as the basis for this new guidance, which is incredibly, unbelievably significant. Especially if it's like not even if it's a study that's talking about something that didn't even make a peer review, wasn't even approved here in the US and was actually done in India, and that's actually being used as the basis for masking here. Now we'll get to that. We're in an upside down Alice in Wonderland world. It means whatever you're told, you just gotta hold it up to a mirror to find out the actual truth. Look, the truth is always like the opposite of what they're telling you. So if they say it's Republicans that are telling you not to take the vaccine, I have actually maybe heard 2 elected officials who are Republicans say don't do it and have run it down. But I have to say, because I've played all these sound bites on radio, way more Democrats who were doing this when Trump was president, specifically because he was president, and somehow the vaccine magically changed when Joe Biden became president. They realized that it didn't actually change the makeup of the vaccine or the process or anything else, right? I mean, I don't know. I mean, I've known way more Republicans that have actually said, you do you. Whether it was Trump, whether it was Rand Paul, Dan Crenshaw, Ron DeSantis, any conservative pundit, me, saying that you don't take the vaccine or you should hesitate to take the vaccine. No, nobody said this. You have to make up your own decision. I trust everyone out there. I trust your all's good judgment because you're going to act in your best interest and the best interest of your families. But the vice president and President Biden, they have run it down. Oh, we've got receipts. Watch.
A vaccine that is approved and even distributed before the election. Would you get it?
Well, I think that's going to be an issue for all of us. if and when the vaccine comes. And it's not likely to go through all the tests that needs to be and the trials that are needed to be done. When we finally do, God willing, get a vaccine, who's going to take the shot? Who's going to take the shot? You can be the first one to say, sign me up. They now say it's okay. And the question of whether it's real when it's there, that requires enormous transparency. You got to make all of it available to other experts across the nation so they can look and see. So there's consensus, this is a safe vaccine. If the president announced tomorrow we have a vaccine, would you take it? Only if it was completely transparent, that other experts in the country could look at it. Only if we knew all of what went into it. If Donald Trump can't give answers and the administration can't give answers to these three questions, the American people should not have confidence.
But if Donald Trump tells us that we should take it, I'm not taking it.
So why is it okay for them to say what they said and they weren't publicly shamed? But when anyone not born of any kind of political pettiness, but just a genuine curious and interest in having a full set of facts or more information before people make a determination whether or not they want to be injected with something, why is it those people are shamed and called murderers? Why? Because those two elected officials, that montage that we just played, they have done more than anyone that they've ever accused in speaking against going out and taking a vaccine. And there's no accountability for this, much less recognition of it, whether it's in legacy press or, to be quite honest, in Washington, D.C. Truth is, Republicans, honestly, most everybody that I've ever known just has said, if you want to get vaccinated, get vaccinated. If you don't, that's your choice. That's called normalcy, by the way, the way things always have been, but we're all down the rabbit hole. I mean, are we leaving normalcy behind? We just maybe so far behind that we forgot things that we always knew, things like the scientific concept of natural immunity. That's another thing. Try to find that on the CDC website. I've tried, you can't find it. I mean, if you've had a virus, and this is one thing we've all known about viruses, if you've had a virus and you survive, you have natural immunity, perhaps the best immunity of all. But it seems that the longer we're in this Alice in Wonderland and we're listening to this Cheshire Cat stuff and getting censored by YouTube, thanks guys, the more we forget basic things like this, right? So why is there no transparency on that? Even how we think about vaccines, this has really dramatically changed. Think about all of the vaccines that you've ever taken in your life. I'm not anti-vax. I just don't want to be forced by my government to do something. I mean, I've had all the vaccines that were recommended to me, and my kids did also. I spaced them out when they were babies, but that's about it. But think back, remember how many vaccines, how they worked before this upside down coronavirus world came to be? I mean, remember, with the exception of what, if you got the flu shot, if you took a vaccine, it generated this immune response and you were inoculated for however many years, depending on what it was, if not for life in some cases. And after your vaccination, you just went back to normalcy. That was true even with the yearly, well, maybe with some people with the flu shot. Every time I got the flu shot, I got the flu, different strain, but whatever. But yes, when you would take vaccines, you just went back to living and you didn't think about polio or, measles or things like that. And just, I mean, you took it and you realized that there have been years of study behind it, and also the fatality rates were a lot higher with those diseases, with what those viruses caused. So you took it because you had enough information to figure out how it worked, and you could make that decision and get on with your life. And if you got sick, some people did, then they got sick, and it does happen. There isn't a guarantee in life. It is called life, and getting sick every so often does happen. But now it seems like all the rules have changed with the advent of the coronavirus vaccinations, because this vaccination, I mean, we can't even hardly question it publicly. I mean, I'm wondering right now, as I'm talking to you, whether or not this whole video is going to get taken down and our whole account's going to get frozen on YouTube, because heaven forbid. Can I even ask whether or not we need constant boosters? Because now we're hearing that, at least with Pfizer, there's a third shot. And because Pfizer says the first and second shot maybe aren't enough. And so the boosters actually are already happening in Israel, and it looks like they're going to happen here soon. But other things have also changed with regards to the whole idea of vaccination itself. So the vaccines, this is not a pejorative. They are considered to be experimental because they are based on new mRNA technology. We have never before in the history of humankind mass vaccinated people with something with mRNA technology like this, number one, but also at this scale, and have developed it this quickly. That is the new normal that we're living in. And so it's not even approved yet by the FDA. It's under emergency authorization, which is why it's even being allowed to be administered. I'm not saying that as a negative because it's just a process that it goes through, and some of it's bureaucracy. Some of it just takes a long time to go through the FDA process. But there are people who are suspended for even using correct terminology and acknowledging where this whole vaccine development is in this process. Furthermore, we don't really have data on any long-term effects from mRNA vaccines. In fact, one of the guys that was behind the creator of the mRNA technology, this guy was suspended on Twitter for even talking about it and correcting news articles. So where does that leave the rest of us? See, in our Alice in Wonderland coronavirus world, you're not even supposed to talk about it. Or some kind of like fact-checking queen might say off with your head. Here's another kind of confusing idea, new idea, that vaccines are recommended, if not increasingly, and here's the difference, mandated to everybody, including even people who aren't at risk, like those who had the coronavirus already and have a natural immunity, which is a first. Now, this quasi-mandate that feels kind of like it's going to come down and be an actual mandate, that's even for young kids who we don't have actual trustworthy data on this. And I'm citing the Wall Street Journal and Johns Hopkins fact checkers who are taking issue with the 335 that the CDC is citing, the children under 18, the fatalities that they're counting from the virus. One of the things the Wall Street Journal and Johns Hopkins is saying is that there were secondary conditions and that they didn't actually properly vet those numbers to be able to make that determination with full confidence. But it's the Cheshire Cat CDC. They want kids vaccinated down to 12 and soon much younger, it seems. So why though? Where's the data to support vaccinating very young children? I mean, I guess that depends on what you mean by data, according to the Cheshire Cat CDC. What's data anyways? What does data even matter? Well, I guess it depends on where you want to go, towards the truth or something else. Here's another thing about the vaccines. It's kind of looking like people who were vaccinated, as I mentioned, have as much viral load when infected with the Delta variant as an unvaccinated person. This actually is something that Dr. Fauci himself has said. And if so, this appears to undermine one of the reasons why people were getting vaccinated. You're going to see some hesitancy. People are going to ask some questions. But it appears now that, people are wondering, do we have immunity? And also, have we completely redefined what a vaccine even is? Have you noticed that? Just in the same way as a society, we've redefined what other terms are, like man, woman, right, wrong, reality, not reality. And if we can't even know these, or even ask about these elementary things, how can we know how to negotiate very complex things like pandemics? So we just fall further down the rabbit hole. And we can be forgiven for it, at least in the beginning. Look, we all thought, we were told 15 days to slow the spread. That was fine. We did it. We were like, well, we don't really like it. Do you remember the memes everybody share? We all share those memes. We get it. We were trusting the CDC somewhat. We at least thought that they had science as their first and foremost motivating factor, and that they would negotiate through this pandemic honestly and transparently. That is what they're there for. That's what they get our tax dollars for. But we didn't realize that the CDC was going to go this Cheshire Cat route, very clueless as to where to go next and constantly moving the goalposts. So here's a question. So what if the Cheshire Cat CDC and Dr. Anthony Fauci, maybe they're not just merely these Cheshire cats just haplessly wandering in circles, chasing their tails because they don't know where to go? What if they're like that? You see these emails in which it's incredibly clear. Dr. Fauci he just squashed the very credible concern of lab escape, the one that you would be suspended for talking about just 4 months ago on social media that Joe Biden can now lend some credence to and discuss publicly without any kind of similar penalty. So should that be investigated? We're starting to ask these questions. And what if it's not just a question of whether or not our experts don't know where to go, but what if it's the opposite? Remember, we're in this upside down Alice in Wonderland world, which means whatever you're told is the truth, it might likely be the opposite. What if they know where we're going, but they're not interested in sharing it with the American people? Here's another thing to think about before we go way too much further down that rabbit hole. Remember President Trump's approach to the virus. Remember the one the media said was so reckless? His approach makes so much more sense now after everything that's transpired. Unlike the Cheshire Cat CDC and the Biden administration, his approach was simple, it was clear, he didn't waver from that path. His approach to the virus was this: we have to get back to living because you're not going to extinguish a virus. You have to live with it. You have to acclimate. And going about it in a preventative way and acclimating and being proactive, that's the way that you kind of beat it. And we've gotten through way far worse things in the past as a nation, including pandemics. It is manageable. We have to get back to living. We have great doctors. We have the best medicine, and we have vaccines even more on the way. And the president didn't just preach, he really walked the walk. Trump himself went into the hospital with coronavirus and was back at work in just, a couple of days? Remember what he said at the time? Let's flash back. Watch.
I just left Walter Reed Medical Center, and it's really something very special. And one thing that's for certain, don't let it dominate you. Don't be afraid of it. You're going to beat it. We have the best medical equipment. We have the best medicines, all developed recently. And you're going to beat it. I didn't feel so good. And 2 days ago, I could have left 2 days ago. 2 days ago, I felt great, like better than I have in a long time. I said just recently, better than 20 years ago. Don't let it dominate. Don't let it take over your lives.
Remember how he flew to the White House in a chopper, got out, and was waving at everybody? That's the way that you handled that. That was the Trump approach to the coronavirus. It never changed. And anyone who followed it, like Ron DeSantis, the state of Florida, Texas, others, they continued to live pretty much perfectly normal life these past 18 months. But all of this, though, was back before we entered this upside-down world of the Biden administration and this Cheshire cat kind of non-direction and confusion. Nobody knows where to go because most of the time the administration doesn't know where to go. There's no leadership on this issue. None. Once again, Trump was right. So we just have to live rather than live in fear. Unfortunately, fear is all this administration wants to talk about. My gosh. Next week, we're actually going to take a deep look into why we find ourselves in this kind of upside-down Alice in Wonderland world, why there's so much confusion, omission of science, suppression of facts, lack of data, fudge data, deplatforming, censorship. For instance, the CDC, I was just telling you about the guidance that, you realize that the guidance that they're telling everyone about right now is apparently based on, it's a study that was done in India that didn't meet peer review standards here in the United States, and so was rejected. Why is there no transparency there? Questions we never seem to get straight answers to. We're hearing calls, by the way, growing louder for mandated vaccinations. Facebook and Google are requiring mandatory vaccinations of all employees. And a lot of state and local governments are too. Well, state of California, anyone who works in government in the state of California, it is required, it's mandated. And military, they're now looking like they're going to follow suit. It seems that there's even rumblings of more lockdowns being thrown about by the Biden administration. Lockdowns that were not even necessary to begin with. I was talking with my friend Charles Payne on radio earlier. If we have another economic lockdown, that's it. We will not recover. There's also rumors that school may not even resume in person again. So in this upside down world, they want you to think that there's no right or wrong or up or down. So see, that's when you just kind of got to put some tinfoil on and speculate and think maybe there's an agenda, a desire to exploit a virus for political purpose, to get to a new normal for some people, but what is chaos for you? Perhaps a new reality that you're not going to very much like. And so next week, I want you all to tune in for a special that I'm going to do. And we're going to look into the why behind the increasingly upside down guidance from the CDC and the Biden administration. Why is this all happening? Is it incompetence or something else? I've never, nor has anyone here ever pretended to have all of the answers. Nobody does. So that's why we ask questions and try to find our way back to the world that once upon a time made sense. Up next, women are exercising their Second Amendment rights, and my awesome friend Rick Ector is helping them to train and do so. This man has helped arm and train more women than almost anybody I know, and he is hosting his 10th annual free firearms training. That's the thing, it's a free training event. He does this every year. He's going to join us and tell us all about it. Black Rifle Coffee Company is a veteran-owned coffee company serving premium coffee to people who love America. Veteran CEO and founder Evan Hafer spent over 7 years on the ground overseas with U.S. Special Forces and as a CIA contractor. Black Rifle Coffee, they're committed to Evan's mission of supporting veteran, law enforcement, and first responder causes. So as this summer winds down, Black Rifle Coffee Company invites you to enjoy your coffee. Whether you're brewing the perfect cup of pour-over or cracking open a can of 300 on your next backcountry mission, Black Rifle Coffee is here to fuel your way. Wherever The final days of summer take you. So head on over to blackriflecoffee.com/DanaTV to order yours. Use code DanaTV at checkout for 20% off your purchase in your first coffee club order. You're going to need it when school starts. You're going to need to get caffeinated. Got to deal with them kids in the morning. Fuel your summer with America's coffee. Black Rifle Coffee. My friend Rick Ector joins me now. And Rick, you heard me say, I'm so glad that you are out there educating women, equipping them, training them, and helping them to really, understand firearms and have the confidence to carry. And if heaven forbid they got to call on that skill set they learned from you to be able to defend themselves using what they've learned. You're very generous with your time, and we're so grateful for you. Thank you for doing this every year.
Not a problem. Thank you for having me. This program is the single most important thing that I've ever done. And to be able to give back to the community and to provide women with free training, it means everything to me, and it does to all the women that participate.
Yes, it does, and I know that because you've just how many women we've talked about this before, but now we're in a brand new year, and you've already gone through several years of programs and of training. How many women do you think that have gone through this program in the past decade?
Easily, I'm probably 10,000 when you consider what we're going to do 4,000 this upcoming August. But, the numbers aren't really important. It's the fact that we can find women who feel that this training is valuable and that they wish to avail themselves of it. We're more than happy to put it on, and we're graced by their attendance.
Yes, there, and we're talking to our friend Rick Ector, DetroitCCW.com, and he's been doing this for a decade, training women to use firearms and making them so that they have the knowledge to be comfortable and confident with their skill set. And I've noticed too, and everything that I've seen just on social media, these are women of all ages. It's not just younger women, and it's not just older women either. Tell us a little bit about the women that come through your doors, and what are their biggest concerns? What do you hear the most from them?
Well, the women that attend the program, they hit every demographic, every age group, every stage of life, from very young at 12 years of age. And we've had, I believe, our oldest student come through approximately 72 years of age a couple of years ago. And they all share the common concern of wanting to take on a more active role in their personal protection. And I am truly honored that they heard about the program and that they helped pass the word and that they actually attended it. The greatest thing that I see from the attendees is a sense of empowerment and confidence when they leave, and just seeing them with their pictures and their silhouettes all over social media. It's an awesome thing to see.
It is an awesome thing to see. And you go over, and we'll talk about the training too. You go over, the basics. I know that you talk to folks and you instruct them about, some of the legal aspects of this too and what it means. And then, you tell folks like what can they expect when they go through your course?
When you consider the sheer volume of people that we're training, I wish it could be more involved. However, we start out with a basic fundamental range safety briefing, and during that range safety briefing, they're taught the fundamentals of firearm safety and gun handling, and pretty much get them geared up to what to expect. In terms of the actual legalities of lethal force usage, that's a little outside the scope. This is more of an introductory, get your big toe wet and see how it feels. And if you wish to pursue something down the road, you at least have this experience to look back on and say, hey, I have an understanding as to what it's all about.
Right. It really removes the mystery, because I would imagine, what do you are these mostly just women who have never gone into a range before, women who've never fired a gun before?
Typically, the vast majority of them have never had any experiences with a firearm and didn't have anyone to turn to. We do have women who have come to this event in prior years, and they actually bring people with them. One year, someone might go by themselves, and the next year, they'll probably bring their children, or maybe even a parent or their next door neighbor. A lot of the growth has been organic, but however we grow, we'll take it. Last year, we were fortunate to have just under 2,000 attendees, and we thought if we add 2 more gun ranges on an additional day, maybe we can double that number and hit 4,000. So hopefully we'll get the word out, and hopefully we can sufficiently embolden women to take us up on our offer.
Yeah, it's an awesome thing to see, Rick. And all the photos that I see of women who are showing, they're holding up their silhouettes and showing their groupings and that. I mean, these are women who the expression on their faces is pretty indescribable. They seem they seem proud, they seem happy, and they look confident. And that's really ultimately, talk a little bit about what you observe, like when they first start to when they get these pictures and they're at the end of the course.
It's an incredible thing to see. I mean, you come in and they really have no idea of what to expect. For many, it will be their first hands-on experience with a firearm. Who knows what they've read in the news media or some of the images they've seen on television. But we assume absolutely nothing. We hold them by the hand. We encourage them. We give them some great fundamental firearm safety. And they go through and they're paired up one-on-one with a firearms instructor. They shoot. And right after the experience, I mean, just to watch the transformation that many of these women undergo, it is truly a sight to behold. And they have great things to say about it, and they start posting all of their pictures online, and it spurs organic growth, and hopefully that growth will hit us to 4,000 this year.
That's awesome. My friend Rick Ector, DetroitCCW.com. Rick, I so appreciate all you do for the Second Amendment and all you do for women to exercise those Second Amendment rights. And I know you're going to have many more years of success with this. Thank you so much, my friend. Good to see you.
Hey, thank you for having me. Good seeing you as well.
Of course. All right, folks. So there's a lot of, we got partisan diversity officers now in the military, and politicizing the military and bringing division in the military. None of this is good for military preparedness. So Congressman Chip Roy, he's introduced a bill to remove any kind of like this race diversity officer position. It's all about the institutionalized Marxist bigotry, to remove these positions from the military. He joins us next. Keep it here. Diversity officers are all the rage these days, even in the military, but do they really help with troop cohesion, really? Or just consume military with identity politics? What about preparedness? Congressman Chip Roy is hiding in the Capitol right now to discuss his Restoring Military Focus Act. Congressman, I know you've had a very busy day on the floor. I know that they're now telling everybody that they have to wear masks. As I understand it, you're kind of hiding in like a corner of the Capitol because who knows when the mask police is going to show up and like cite you or drag you off to jail. We appreciate you joining us.
Dana, good to be on as always. And today I'm actually not hiding. I was down on the floor all afternoon, but we're between votes. We're trying to negotiate and see what we can push them on. But they're not much in a negotiating mood. But we've been jamming them up all day with a lot of votes.
And I want to get to the topic at hand because you literally just came in from being on the floor. Do you have to like chug Gatorade and that when after you go on the floor and you battle it out, then you come back? Is it like UFC where you got to like go and like get ready, you got to cut in all that stuff?
I wish it were, right? I mean, we should just go ahead and have it out, because it's just getting pretty absurd down there. I mean, look, seriously, we'll talk about the issue at hand, but what's happening right now where the Speaker of the House has basically forced the Capitol Police to do what they don't want to do, which is basically threaten to arrest our staff if they come into offices without a mask. So I've been objecting all day to anything that I can to sort of make it uncomfortable for my Democratic colleagues. And we're going to keep raising the issue. And a bunch of House members, we went over to the Senate, and Mike Lee and Ted Cruz and others were down there on the floor of the Senate talking about freedom and about not forcing people to do something they don't want to do. And like, at the end of the day, I'm pro-vaccine. My dad had polio. I understand vaccines, but this is America, and this is getting ridiculous what we're doing with respect to the masks and the vaccine.
Yeah, vaccines one thing, for the government forcing people to do something is another thing, not being transparent. It's interesting, too, how just down the hall in the Senate, they don't have that same mandate. It's very interesting. So I want to talk to you real quick about your legislation because and I'm very glad that you're doing this. It's a bill to remove U.S. military's diversity officer positions, which, I don't know how that contributes to any kind of military preparedness. And we have a lot of wokery going on in the military, and meanwhile, everything that we read, we need to actually catch up with some stuff in the Pacific. Your thoughts?
Well, Dana, one of the things that I get to do as a member of Congress is nominate individuals to be in the academies. And we had our big send-off for these young men and women about a month or two ago in San Antonio, where we got a lot of military folks, as you know. And, the one thing every parent came to me and said is that you've got to stop this woke stuff in the military, because they said it's going to endanger my son or daughter, depending on the situation. And, they've been watching all the stuff you and I are watching. We've got these positions that have been put in the Department of Defense. We've got these videos that have been put out talking about how we can recruit and be, sympathetic to those who come from parents with 2 moms or 2 dads or whatever. And we're spending literally millions of dollars in positions and focus on critical race theory and all of this woke training. And look, I mean, our military is supposed to be about killing people and destroying things when called upon to do so. And we need to be training them to do that. And I talked to the veterans throughout my community, and none of them want us to be a woke military. So we introduced legislation to eliminate this chief diversity officer. We don't need this. We just need to be focused on training men and women to do the job of defending the United States of America. And that's what I'm going to continue to push to do.
No, and I'm glad that you said that too. And the idea of having, diversity officer, diversity, skin color, ethnicity, religion, none of this stuff matters, because it's all about having one fighting force. It's all about cohesion, which suggests that those titles in the first place that's just completely oxymoronic to the point of what the military does.
No, that's right. And this is the thing that the Democratic Party is doing. They're continuing to want to divvy us up by race. That's a quote from Chief Justice Roberts in some litigation about a decade ago. And that's their purpose, right? The whole reason for critical race theory is to purposely divide us by race. You know that, I know that, because we study it. But, most Americans are going about their daily life, and their kids go to school and they take them to a baseball game, or they got to go to work or whatever. They don't study all this stuff. And then suddenly they see during this pandemic, wait a minute, my kids are getting trained to hate America. My kids are getting trained to hate their race. My kids are being trained to actually be, racist, to think in race terms. And
I was looking at this, not to interrupt you, but I was looking at this, the United States Operations Command, one of the appointments, Richard Torres Estrada, you've talked about this. That's one of those CDOs, Chief Diversity Officer. He came under fire in March. His critics were saying that he was sharing memes in June of 2020 where he was comparing Trump to Hitler. And the stuff that he talks about, he doesn't just, there's one thing to express a political opinion, and then there's another thing to run down people because of they think differently politically, and then expect everyone to kind of get over it. Let's have our cohesion, when apparently these officers, like this guy's not expected to have it. So how are people who are under him expected to have it?
Well, and then we had, on the other hand, we had the guy from Space Force, and you probably saw this story, who was, threatened to be fired, or maybe he was fired, I can't remember, for actually, putting out there that he was critical of this woke training. And so he comes out and says that, and then suddenly he's, either actually fired or facing being fired. And, that's what's wrong. And we're seeing that across the country, not just in our military. But with our military, it's particularly bad. And I want to give a shout out to my friend Dan Crenshaw, who's obviously a veteran and was injured in battle. And Dan's been great on this, right, and hitting this really hard. My friend Burgess Owens, obviously he's a black representative from Utah. He's been hitting this issue really hard across our government. Dan Bishop from North Carolina. There's a lot of us focusing on it, and particularly in our military, but also our schools. And we've just got to take this stuff back, Dan. I mean, we've hit the limit. If we want to save this country, it's time now, and we've got to step up and do it.
Yeah, last quick thing for you. I really appreciated your remarks on the floor the other day when you pointed out the number of people coming across the border who are not being tested, or even if they are, there's like no, proof. There's no vaccination card being given to people who are coming across the border. Yet everyone else is supposed to follow guidelines from the CDC that apparently no one. That people from the border aren't expected to follow. So I really appreciated your remarks on that. And if Joe Biden, Congressman, was serious, he would probably take some better action at the border, yes?
No, that's exactly right. And I pointed out yesterday that we've got Catholic Charities actually taking people who we know to be positive, putting them in a hotel in La Jolla, Texas, literally hundreds, maybe 1,000. We've got, I think, now 90 Border Patrol agents who have tested positive for COVID in the last week or two.
And we don't have a lot of Border Patrol agents anyway.
No, they're getting taken out because they're focusing on processing people, and we're running people into our country. I just had a guy from the border text me last night. He said we had another 500 just yesterday evening. I mean, it's continuing, and it's bad for migrants, bad for America, and we're hypocritical. Democrats are hypocritical about forcing Americans to have to deal with masks and mandates while they're leaving our border wide open.
There you go. Yeah, Congressman Chip Roy from Texas. Good to see you, sir. Take care out there in D.C., and we'll talk with you again soon.
God bless, Dana. Take care.
Take care, you too. All right, folks, are schools going to open for in-person learning this fall? We'll see. Keep it here. Well, if you wanted to create a powder keg situation this fall, what you might do is tell mothers and fathers that after a year and a half of Zoom learning and masking and endless talks about miracle vaccines, guess what? Your kid may not be doing in-person learning again this fall. I mean, I'm just saying that seems to be what Randy Weingarten, who is head of the ATF, the American Teachers Federation, which is one of the largest teachers unions, that seems to be at least what she's saying here. Watch.
Has really thrown this curveball that says that, well, vaccination is the #1 gold standard, that we need to, bring back our masks for schools. So the bottom line is we're going to keep kids safe, we're going to keep our members safe, and we're going to try to open up schools, and we're going to try to move through this political battlefield.
Yeah, remember when our leaders who faced crises in the past, they used to say that we must carry on. Remember Winston Churchill's bravery against Hitler? That comes to mind. I mean, even after 9/11, President Bush wanted us to get back to normal. And I still remember the whole saying, keep America rolling, which in the face of a devastating terrorist attack, that was a call from our leaders to not stop living, to get back to life, even though we were going to be engaged in an uncertain fight. Keep calm, carry on, even though the next terrorist attack felt imminent at the time. See, it seems our leaders back then understood that the enemy had already won if we all just hid in our homes, afraid to go out and live lives. See our kids' recital, go to the kids' football game, go to a movie or play, or stop gathering together for the game. Our leaders used to understand that if we're going to live in fear because of an imminent nuclear attack, for example, which was possible during the Cold War, or a terrorist attack, which is still possible anytime, what's the point of living at all? Once you live in fear like that, in constant fear, you've already lost what made life worth living. And that means the enemy already won. So why should our approach to dealing with this enemy, a coronavirus, why should that be any different? It shouldn't be. But see, leaders like Randy Weingarten, they don't seem to have the stomach to stand up, actually, or maybe the motivation. It might be something else. See, it was revealed, you might remember, that the CDC didn't reopen schools last year at the request of Randy Weingarten, which meant that her teachers union was actually writing school policies as from the CDC, school-related guidance like masking, whether or not schools could open, rather than actually following the science. And let's be real, this viral enemy that's called coronavirus, it is especially hard on our kids, but not because coronavirus hurts them, like the media says. If that were true, we'd all understand why kids have been Zoom learning and masking off and on for the past year and a half. The virus actually only hurts older adults, people with comorbidities, for the most part, and very few at that. And now we have so many tools to defend against this enemy too. Therapeutics, better hospital protocols, even more knowledge about the virus itself. That's why at the peak of the pandemic, thousands of people, and again, when you look at it, it was those who had had comorbidities, they were elderly, but you had thousands of people dying a day from the virus. And now you show a few hundred, maybe on average each day. A few hundred Americans also died of Alzheimer's yesterday, but we don't stop life. And that's not being cruel, it's cruel to stop life. We also have a miraculously safe and effective vaccine, we're told. Everybody said this, everybody has access to it. And the kids, all the data suggests, don't actually spread the virus, or at least very well, the older ones, and they don't die from the virus. And so they can't hurt the teachers. So why wouldn't we open schools and get our kids back to learning, living, socializing, and having just a normal childhood? And maybe the schools will open, but that clip of Randy Weingarten, that's worrisome, because it looks like our leaders, while they listen to Weingarten, she's got a lot of union votes behind her, they no longer understand the idea of service and sacrifice. Perhaps there's an infinitesimal risk to opening the schools, but aren't our kids more than worth it? We've heard teachers tell us for decades how essential they are. They should be paid better, we're told. Better benefits, better pensions, teacher appreciation days, etc. And everyone does agree that teachers are essential, but right now it seems that Randy Weingarten would have us believe that they're not. And if teachers aren't essential, then no one is. And what are we teaching our kids by covering cowering in the face of a virus that has a survivability rate of 99% plus. That life can be lived without risk. That's a message that apparently Randy Weingarten should know. We don't send that kind of message to our children. The truth is, all the best things in life require risk. Freedom itself is a risk. And certainly one of the best things in life are our kids. Giving them a normal life, that's worth risking for, especially when the risk is so tiny with which to begin in the first place. Randy Weingarten, the school bell's about to ring. Parents have had enough. It's kind of time to start putting our kids first instead of politics and bureaucracy. And that means giving kids a normal childhood and teaching them that age-old adage that when the going gets tough, the tough get going. Yeah, and maybe if Weingarten doesn't understand this, maybe have a teacher take her place who actually understands. Weingarten doesn't even have children, as I understand. A teacher with kids that understands that truly living involves risk. You have an entire generation of kids that are depending on it. That does it for us tonight. Thanks for tuning in. Good night, and don't bend the knee.